Look at that face. Aren't you just the best little guy in the world?
Hello there, little guy. Aren't you a sweet one?
The morning light spilled softly through the shelter's wide windows, painting the linoleum floor with long, warm streaks. Dust motes danced lazily in the sunbeams. Volunteers moved quietly, their footsteps soft, almost reverent. The usual sounds of a shelter, a distant bark, a gentle whine, the shuffle of paws on tile, blended into a calm, steady rhythm. In the far corner, a small brown and white pup lay curled up on a worn blanket. His ears twitched occasionally. His eyes, dark and observant, followed every movement, but only from a safe distance. When someone came near, he shifted back slightly, a small warning in his subtle hesitation. He wasn't shy, not exactly. He was careful. "Here's little Finn," a volunteer whispered, kneeling beside the cage. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, like she didn't want to startle him. "He's picky, I guess." Not many people catch his attention. Finn lifted his head just slightly, his gaze scanning the room. Today, like every other day, people came and went. Hands reached through the bars, calling softly, offering treats. Finn let them try. He sniffed. He turned away. Nothing held his attention long. There was a gentle sadness to him, not fear, not pain. Just a quiet, unspoken understanding that he had to choose who entered his world. A bell tinkled at the entrance. The door opened, letting in a small shaft of sunlight that moved across the floor. Finn's ears flicked. He shifted on his blanket. And then, he froze. A stranger stepped inside. Not many visitors made him pause like this. The man walked slowly, his steps measured, calm. His eyes were soft, curious, and warm, not the usual hurried or overly excited gaze that came from most people. He smiled faintly, almost to himself, glancing at the rows of dogs with gentle attention. Finn's tail lifted just a fraction. Not wagging, not yet. But it moved. A subtle gesture, full of intention. He rose to his paws, moving closer to the bars. His nose twitched, his ears pricked. Something about this stranger felt different. "See that?" the volunteer whispered to another helper nearby. "He's actually looking at someone, not just sniffing and turning away." The stranger crouched slightly, keeping his hands still, not reaching through the bars. He spoke softly, words too quiet to fully catch, but his tone was calm, almost melodic. Finn tilted his head. He took a small step forward. Then another. There was no rush. No barking. No frantic jumping. Just a measured, deliberate connection forming, as if the pup recognized something familiar, something safe. The volunteer stepped back, giving space. "I don't think he's ever done that before," she murmured. "Not with anyone." Finn's eyes never left the stranger's face. There was an almost imperceptible gleam of recognition, curiosity, something deeper than simple attention. And then, slowly, he let out a soft, tentative whine. Not a cry, not a demand, just a gentle question. The stranger smiled wider, voice lowering further, so soft it felt like a secret. "Hey there, little one, it's okay. I'm right here." Finn's head tilted. He stepped closer to the bars again. The volunteer noticed the tiny signs of trust emerging, the relaxed tail, the soft ears, the almost imperceptible leaning toward the stranger. It was as if Finn was saying, maybe this one is different. Time slowed. Each second stretched, filled with golden light and quiet anticipation. The other visitors blurred in the background. The world shrank to just Finn, the stranger, and the soft hum of the shelter. "Looks like he's found someone," the volunteer whispered. She didn't move, didn't interrupt, just watched, heart quietly swelling. Finn took another small step, then froze again. His gaze was unwavering, focused, not playful, not demanding, but deliberate. He sniffed the air, sensing, analyzing, connecting. And in that golden, quiet moment, it was clear that something significant was about to unfold. Something small, gentle, and warm, yet powerful. The stranger crouched a little closer, hands still and empty, allowing Finn the space to make the choice. Finn's tail flicked slightly. His eyes softened. He let out a tiny sigh, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. What the dog sensed would change everything. The shelter hummed with its usual morning life, but for Finn and this stranger, the rhythm had shifted. A story had begun. A bond was forming in silence. And somewhere deep inside, both pup and human understood, this moment mattered. The sunlight caught the glint in Finn's eyes again. Calm, curious, purposeful. And for the first time in many mornings, he seemed ready. The first gentle threads of connection had been woven. The stranger didn't rush. He simply stayed where he was, crouched slightly, letting the golden morning light spill across his face. Finn's gaze never wavered. His small paws shifted on the worn blanket, and his tail gave a subtle, slow wag, a heartbeat of trust forming in real time. Volunteers whispered quietly among themselves, careful not to interrupt. "He's choosing," one said. "He always refuses," but now, her voice trailed off as Finn leaned just a little closer to the stranger. The stranger slowly extended a hand, not toward Finn, but just resting gently on the bars, palms open. "You're okay," he murmured. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Finn sniffed, his nose twitching. He didn't rush, didn't leap. He simply tilted his head, ears perked, reading the stranger like a book he had never opened before. And then, he made the first move. A tiny step forward. Not into the stranger's reach, but enough to close the invisible gap of caution. His eyes flicked from the stranger's face to his hands, back again. Something unspoken passed between them, a soft understanding. Finn's intuition was guiding him, a quiet signal that this human was safe. Worth noticing. Worth connection. The stranger smiled faintly, eyes soft. He didn't speak, didn't try to coax. Just presence. Calm. Warmth. And that was enough. Finn shifted again, his small body moving deliberately. He lifted a paw slightly, testing. His whiskers brushed against the stranger's hand, not touching, just sensing. The subtle warmth of it seemed to resonate with something deep inside him. He stepped back, then forward again, ears flicking, nose twitching, tail slowly sweeping. The volunteer let out a soft breath, hidden behind her hand. He's actually assessing him," she whispered. "It's like he knows something we don't." Finn sat back on his haunches for a moment, tilting his head. His eyes were dark, wide, searching, but there was no fear. Only curiosity. And a spark, the beginning of a bond he hadn't offered anyone before. The stranger's voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. "You're a smart little guy, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes." Finn's tail flicked again. The small sound of it brushing the blanket echoed softly in the quiet room. He stepped closer once more. Not frantic. Not eager. Careful. Intentional. Like he was saying, "I'm ready to notice you, but on my own terms." A gentle warmth filled the shelter, almost visible in the way sunlight pooled on the floor. Finn's instincts guided him, and every subtle motion reflected it. A tilt of the head. A slight shift of weight. A soft sniff in the air. He was reading the stranger, sensing intentions, evaluating, yet every action carried trust. The stranger noticed the micro-gestures, the small changes in posture, the tiny lean forward, the way Finn's tail stayed calm. He spoke softly again. "I'm not here to rush you, just here, if you want me to stay." Finn sat back for a moment, ears pricked, head slightly tilted, absorbing it all. Then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned in, nudging the bars just slightly. Not asking. Not demanding. Simply initiating a subtle connection. It was an act of pure intuition. A quiet, deliberate signal. This stranger was different. Something told Finn that he could trust him, perhaps even confide in him. The volunteer watched, her heart swelling. She had seen Finn interact with dozens of visitors. None of them had ever inspired this much focus, this deliberate curiosity. "I've never seen him like this," she said softly. "It's like he knows." Finn sniffed again, closer this time, his whiskers brushing against the stranger's palm resting on the cage bars. The stranger didn't move. Just presence. Calm. Warmth. And in that shared quiet, a bond began forming. Not loud, not obvious, but deep and instinctive. Time seemed to stretch. A distant bark, a shuffle of paws, the hum of the shelter, all faded into the background. It was just Finn and the stranger. And in that golden pause, the pup's gentle intuition guided him closer, step by step, toward trust. Finally, Finn settled back on his blanket, tail slowly sweeping, eyes locked on the stranger. A small, almost imperceptible sigh escaped him, a release of tension, a quiet acknowledgement that he had chosen, in his own way. The stranger's voice broke the stillness again. "I think you and I might understand each other, little one." Finn's ears twitched. A small, soft whine, more of a question than a sound, slipped out. He nudged the blanket slightly, testing the space between them, as if asking for permission, or maybe offering it. The volunteer's eyes glistened. "He's making the first move," she whispered. "He's really choosing." And in that simple, golden moment, the warmth in the room deepened. Finn's intuition had spoken. His focus, his careful steps, the tiny gestures of trust all signaled something profound. Something unspoken. Something that only the two of them understood. The stranger remained crouched, quiet, patient. No rush. No fuss. Just presence. And Finn, small, deliberate, gentle Finn, continued to choose him, moment by moment. It was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. But it was enough. Enough to know that this connection was beginning, a connection based on instinct, trust, and a quiet, warm understanding. And as the sunlight shifted across the room, pooling over Finn's small frame, the volunteer whispered again, almost to herself, "I think he's found someone special." The pup's soft gaze held the stranger's. Calm, curious, connected. And for the first time, Finn didn't look away. The stranger remained crouched near Finn's cage, calm and still, allowing the moment to stretch. Sunlight pooled across the room, catching in the little pup's fur, highlighting every brown and white patch. Dust motes floated lazily in the warm morning air, like tiny stars suspended in sunlight. From across the room, the volunteer leaned against a wall, arms folded, watching closely. Her heart was quietly racing. Finn had never shown this level of focus toward anyone. Ever. Not a single visitor had drawn his attention like this, and the way he moved, deliberate and intentional, was almost hypnotic to watch. "He's really studying him," she murmured softly to another volunteer beside her. "Like he's reading him. Not just sniffing or reacting, actually choosing." The other volunteer nodded, voice low. "I've never seen anything like it. It's kind of magical." Finn shifted slightly on his blanket, tail sweeping the floor slowly, ears pricked forward. His eyes never left the stranger's face. The small whine he had made earlier softened, almost contemplative. He sniffed the air, as if confirming his instincts. Then, with a subtle tilt of his head, he stepped just a little closer. The stranger smiled faintly, hands still resting gently on the bars. He didn't move closer. He didn't reach into the cage. He simply let Finn take the lead, letting the pup's intuition guide the rhythm of the interaction. The volunteer stepped back slightly, allowing more space. Her gaze softened as she watched. "He's really responding to him," she said, almost in awe. "It's like he knows something about this guy that we don't. Something deeper." Finn's gaze lingered on the stranger's face. He sniffed again, tentative but deliberate, leaning just slightly forward. The stranger's voice, soft and calm, broke the silence. "You're a smart one, aren't you?" he said quietly. "I think I understand you, more than you realize." Finn's ears twitched. His tail gave a gentle sweep. He stepped a fraction closer, resting his front paws lightly on the blanket, testing proximity, testing trust. From across the room, the volunteer tilted her head, curiosity growing. "I wonder what he's sensing," she whispered. "He's usually so cautious, but with this guy, he's different. Almost intentional. It's like he can read him." The stranger crouched a little lower, voice lowering further. "I'm not here to rush you. I just want to be near, if that's okay." Finn's eyes softened. He sniffed again, tilting his head. He leaned forward just enough to close the invisible gap, still maintaining careful control over the interaction. Every small movement spoke volumes: trust, attention, curiosity. The volunteer exhaled slowly. She had watched Finn for months, and this was unlike anything she had seen. Most people reached for him too quickly. Most visitors assumed affection could be forced. But Finn only gave it when he felt it. And right now, something deep inside him had chosen. "He's letting him in," she whispered, almost reverently. "Step by step, and on his own terms." Finn settled back on his blanket, tail still sweeping slowly, but his eyes never left the stranger's face. There was a soft confidence in his posture, a gentle assurance that he was observing, understanding, connecting. The stranger's voice, barely above a whisper, floated across the quiet room. "You don't have to do anything, just be yourself. That's enough." Finn's gaze softened further. A tiny whine slipped out again, a sound more of contemplation than need. He leaned forward just slightly, resting his chin on the edge of the blanket. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't an invitation. It was acknowledgement. Connection. The volunteer couldn't help smiling. "I think he's curious," she murmured. "Not just noticing, not just sensing, but actively curious. And he's trusting him to figure it out." The stranger's eyes met hers briefly. "He's remarkable," he said quietly. "I can see it in him, in the way he notices, the way he thinks. It's rare." Finn's tail swept slowly. He stepped a tiny bit closer again. He sniffed the air near the stranger's hand, brushing it with his nose, careful, measured, deliberate. The smallest gesture carried immense significance. The volunteer exhaled softly, heart swelling. He's choosing. It's subtle, but it's there. He's making the choice himself. And in that golden, quiet moment, the warmth in the room deepened. Finn's intuition had guided him, step by step, toward a stranger he had never met, yet somehow, instinctively, knew. The stranger crouched even lower, letting the moment breathe. "You're amazing, little guy," he whispered. "I see you. I really do." Finn's ears twitched. A tiny whine again. A soft, deliberate nudge forward. His eyes locked onto the stranger's. Calm, curious, connected. For the first time in many months, the volunteer could see the full extent of Finn's subtle intelligence. Not just a playful pup. Not just cautious. But perceptive, aware, intuitive, and capable of forming deep connections on his own terms. The room seemed to pause around them, sunlight glowing warm across Finn's fur, the stranger's hand resting gently on the bars. And in that stillness, something undeniable unfolded, the beginning of a bond that neither time nor circumstance had forced, but which intuition and gentle trust had created. And the volunteer whispered again, almost to herself, a soft smile touching her lips, "He's chosen, in his own way. And I think he's ready to show it." The golden light caught Finn's eyes again. Calm, curious, purposeful. And the connection, subtle, intuitive, and deep, continued to grow, moment by moment. The morning had grown warmer, sunlight spilling across the shelter floor, pooling around the little brown and white pup like a soft spotlight. Finn's eyes remained fixed on the stranger crouched before him. Step by step, inch by inch, he inched closer, guided by his own quiet curiosity and instinctive intuition. The stranger stayed perfectly still, his calm presence acting like a gentle anchor. No sudden movements, no reaching too fast, just the warmth of patience and quiet understanding. Finn sniffed at the air near his hand, whiskers brushing against the bars, and then leaned back, ears slightly relaxed, as if considering the next move. From across the room, the volunteer watched with a soft smile, heart quietly swelling. "Look at him," she whispered. "He's letting someone in. Slowly. But fully. That's trust." Finn's tail gave a slow, deliberate sweep. He took another small step closer. His eyes never left the stranger's face, studying every expression, every subtle gesture. It was deliberate, intentional. His actions weren't playful or impulsive, they were thoughtful, almost like he was weighing something unseen, something profound. The stranger spoke softly, almost to himself. "You're a clever little guy. I can see how carefully you choose." His hand rested on the bars, still empty, still patient. "You don't have to rush. I'll wait. I'm right here." Finn tilted his head, his gaze holding the stranger's. He sniffed again, leaning just slightly toward him. The tension in his small body melted into a quiet, tentative connection. It was subtle, but unmistakable. He was showing the first signs of emotional openness, a willingness to be seen, to be known. The volunteer stepped closer, careful to remain unobtrusive. "It's like he recognizes him," she whispered softly. "Not just anyone, him. Somehow he knows." Finn rested his front paws lightly on the blanket, shifting his weight as if testing the space between them. The stranger's eyes softened, voice lowering further. "I see you. I see everything you're feeling. You don't have to hide from me." The little pup's ears flicked, tail sweeping slowly, and he leaned just a fraction closer. His gaze remained unwavering. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't urgency. It was trust. Pure, quiet, and deliberate trust. The volunteer could feel the room holding its breath. Time seemed to stretch, filled with golden light, soft warmth, and the quiet rhythm of trust building. Finn's small sigh, almost imperceptible, spoke volumes. He was opening up, slowly, carefully, on his own terms. The stranger whispered again, his voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the shelter. "It's okay, you don't have to do anything, just be yourself." Finn's whiskers brushed again against the stranger's hand resting near the bars. He leaned in slightly, a soft, tentative gesture, a silent acknowledgement that the connection was real. His eyes held understanding, acceptance, and the first threads of a bond forming. The volunteer exhaled softly. "I've never seen him like this," she murmured. "Step by step, he's trusting. Not just noticing, but allowing himself to feel, to connect." Finn took another small step forward, resting his chin lightly on the edge of the blanket. The stranger's eyes softened, a small smile curving his lips. "You're incredible," he whispered. "I promise. I'll be here. Always." The pup's tail gave a slow sweep, a gentle rhythm. He nudged the blanket slightly with his paw, small, deliberate, measured. Every action carried meaning, every motion a reflection of emotional openness. From across the room, the volunteer watched quietly. Her heart swelled with quiet awe. Finn had never behaved like this. He had never allowed someone to enter his world so deliberately. "He's connecting," she whispered. "Fully. In his own way, and at his own pace." The stranger stayed crouched, patient, still. The golden light highlighted the soft glint in Finn's eyes. Calm, curious, connected. The small gestures, the tiny shifts of weight, the deliberate sniffing and gentle nudges all signaled that something profound was taking root. Finn let out another soft, tentative whine. This time, it wasn't a question. It was acknowledgement. Understanding. Acceptance. The connection had deepened. Slowly. Gently. Quietly, without words, without rush, without demand. The volunteer whispered again, almost to herself, "It's like he's saying, I choose you. I see you. And I trust you." The stranger's voice remained soft, patient. I see you too, little one. And I'll keep seeing you, as long as you let me. Finn's gaze softened even further. Tail sweeping slowly, ears relaxed. He rested more fully on the blanket, leaning just slightly toward the stranger. The first true signs of emotional connection had formed, fragile, delicate, yet undeniable. Time seemed to pause. The hum of the shelter faded into the background. The golden light wrapped around the two of them like a gentle embrace. And in that warm, quiet space, the first full bond of trust and understanding had begun. Finn's small, deliberate movements, the way he leaned, the soft nudges, the quiet whines, all spoke louder than words ever could. The connection was real. Emotional. Warm. And slowly, carefully, it was becoming unbreakable. The volunteer smiled, eyes glistening. He's chosen him, she whispered. Not out of need, out of understanding. It's beautiful. Finn lifted his gaze to the stranger one last time. Calm, curious, connected. And in the quiet golden light of the morning, a soft, warm truth settled in the room. The bond between them had begun. Not forced. Not hurried. But intentional. Gentle. And profoundly real. And as the stranger's hand rested gently near the bars, Finn's tiny sigh spoke of trust, of curiosity, of connection, and the beginning of something beautiful. The golden morning light had shifted slightly, pooling now near the corner where Finn lay on his blanket. The pup's brown and white fur glowed softly in the sunbeams. He rested his chin lightly on the edge of the cage, eyes still locked on the stranger crouched nearby. The stranger remained calm, letting Finn set the pace. He spoke in soft, quiet tones, voice barely above a whisper. You're doing so well, step by step. I see you. Finn's ears flicked. He leaned forward slightly, nudging the blanket just enough to signal attention, interest, and trust. His small whines were subtle, thoughtful, not of need, but of acknowledgement. Each gentle gesture carried meaning. From across the room, the volunteer observed quietly, heart swelling. Finn had never behaved like this with anyone. And the stranger, there was something in the way he interacted, calm, patient, warm, that invited Finn to show more of himself than he had to anyone before. The stranger shifted slightly, hand resting near Finn without touching. He spoke again, softer this time, almost like a secret. You know, sometimes we notice things about each other without words. Sometimes, we recognize each other. Finn's eyes widened just slightly, ears pricked, tail sweeping slowly across the blanket. He leaned a fraction closer, as if sensing something familiar. There was a subtle shift in his posture, a quiet curiosity now mingled with trust. The volunteer whispered to herself, almost reverently, it's like he understands him. Somehow. The stranger continued, voice calm, rhythmic, storytelling in tone. I used to have a dog once. A little one, full of spirit, full of heart. And I think I see a part of him in you. Finn tilted his head, small whines escaping. He leaned closer again, eyes tracking every expression, every subtle movement. His tail flicked slowly, deliberately. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't demanding. He was listening, connecting, feeling. The volunteer's eyes softened. He's responding, she whispered. It's like he senses the story, the meaning, and he's curious. The stranger's voice lowered further. You remind me of someone I cared for, someone I learned so much from. And I think you understand more than we realize. Finn sniffed at the edge of the blanket, leaning just slightly forward, whiskers brushing against the bars. He let out a tiny sigh, almost imperceptible, but heavy with quiet emotion. He had recognized something familiar in the stranger's voice, in his calm presence, in the warmth that radiated from him. The volunteer stepped back, letting the moment breathe. She felt the subtle power of it, Finn's small, deliberate movements, the careful way he leaned in, the soft whines that punctuated the silence. It was trust, curiosity, and instinct all intertwined. The stranger smiled faintly, eyes warm. You don't have to do anything, just be here with me. Finn's tail swept slowly again, a soft rhythm of acknowledgement. He inched just slightly closer, eyes holding the stranger's gaze. Each small step was deliberate, filled with meaning. Each tiny gesture carried layers of understanding, subtle but profound. The volunteer whispered under her breath, "He's choosing, and he's recognizing something too. It's beautiful." Finn rested his chin a little more firmly on the blanket, letting the closeness feel natural. The stranger's voice remained calm, reflective, soft. Sometimes, the smallest gestures, the quietest moments, tell us the most. Finn's ears twitched. He nudged the blanket again with his paw, not urgently, not demanding. A gentle, deliberate action that said, "I see you. I'm listening. I'm noticing." The volunteer's breath caught in her throat. She had seen Finn show trust, curiosity, and care before, but never like this. Never so deliberate, so quiet, so intentional. The bond forming was subtle, slow, yet undeniable. The stranger's hand remained still near the bars, warm sunlight glinting across it. His voice was soft, almost hypnotic in its calmness. "You're remarkable, the way you notice, the way you respond. I see all of it. And I promise, it's okay to trust me." Finn leaned just slightly more. His eyes softened, ears relaxed, tail sweeping a gentle rhythm. He sniffed once, small, deliberate, thoughtful. Each tiny action was a thread weaving the connection between them tighter. The volunteer whispered again, heart swelling. "It's like he knows something about this person. Something important, something he's been waiting for." The stranger's voice softened further, rhythmic, calming, reflective. "Sometimes, we find each other when we least expect it. Sometimes, we recognize what we've been missing without even realizing it." Finn tilted his head, ears flicking, eyes wide, tail sweeping slowly. He stepped just a fraction closer. His small whine was quiet, almost a breath, an acknowledgement, a confirmation, a question answered by intuition rather than words. The volunteer's smile was gentle, almost tearful. He's letting him in, fully, in his own way. And he knows it's safe. The golden sunlight wrapped the pup and the stranger in a warm glow. Each small gesture, a nudge, a sigh, a tiny lean forward, was part of the quiet reveal. Finn's intuition, careful observation, and trust were unfolding slowly, deliberately, beautifully. The stranger's voice softened to a whisper, reflective and calm. "I see you. I understand you, and I'm glad you let me near." Finn's gaze softened, tail sweeping a slow rhythm. Calm, curious, connected. Each breath, each gesture, each subtle movement spoke volumes. The gentle reveal had begun. And as the golden light pooled around them, it was clear, this connection was deeper than observation. It was recognition, trust, and quiet understanding, a bond forming in the warmest, most gentle way. And as Finn rested his chin once more on the edge of the blanket, eyes never leaving the stranger, the volunteer whispered softly, "He's ready, and somehow, he knows." The story's only beginning. The afternoon sun had shifted lower, casting long, warm streaks across the shelter floor. The golden light touched Finn's fur, making every brown and white patch glow softly. The room seemed quieter somehow, the usual shuffles of paws and distant barks faded into the background. It was as if the entire shelter had paused, holding its breath for the quiet drama unfolding between pup and stranger. Finn had been observing, leaning, sniffing, and nudging for hours, and now something had shifted. The subtle trust he had been offering in tiny gestures, the slow tail sweeps, the deliberate steps, the small whines, had grown into something deeper. His eyes, dark and luminous, held more than curiosity now. They held recognition, understanding, and anticipation. The stranger remained still, crouched near the cage, hand resting lightly on the bars. His voice was soft, rhythmic, and gentle. "You've come a long way, little one, and I see you. I see everything." Finn tilted his head, ears flicking. He leaned forward just slightly, whiskers brushing against the edge of the blanket. His tail swept slowly, deliberately. And then, almost imperceptibly, he took another step closer. Not a leap. Not a rush. A careful, intentional movement that carried the weight of choice. From across the room, the volunteer watched quietly, holding her breath. "He's deciding," she whispered. "I can see it. This is the moment." Finn rested his chin lightly on the edge of the cage, eyes fixed on the stranger's face. He let out a soft sigh, almost like a small exhale of courage. For the first time, he wasn't just observing. He was participating. Offering trust. Offering connection. The stranger smiled faintly, voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay, you can come closer. I'm right here." Finn's ears flicked. His tail swept slowly again. He inched forward, this time bridging the last small gap of hesitation. Nose twitching, he pressed gently against the stranger's hand, feeling warmth, calmness, and acceptance. The volunteer's eyes glistened with tears. He's really doing it," she murmured. "He's choosing him. Fully. On his own terms." The stranger's voice softened further. "I see you, little one. I understand you, and I'm glad you trust me." Finn's tail gave a gentle wag. He shifted his weight, resting his chest slightly against the bars, nudging closer. The hesitation that had defined him for so long was melting, replaced by quiet courage. He had made a choice. A deliberate, thoughtful, emotional choice. The volunteer whispered under her breath, almost reverently, "It's beautiful, the way he decides. Not out of need, but because he feels it." The stranger remained calm, still, his presence an anchor of warmth and patience. "You don't have to do anything, just be here with me." "That's enough." Finn's small whine escaped again, soft, deliberate. He leaned in slightly more, ears relaxed, eyes softening. The subtle movements, the brush of whiskers, the sweep of tail, the careful shifting forward were all threads weaving the bond tighter. From across the room, the volunteer watched, heart swelling. "He's not just responding," she whispered. "He's opening up, completely. And he knows it's safe." Finn nudged the blanket one last time, resting his chin fully near the stranger's hand. The golden light caught in his eyes, calm, curious, connected. It was a moment that spoke louder than words ever could. The stranger's voice was quiet, reflective. "I see you, and I understand you, and I promise. I'll be here. Always." Finn's tail gave a slow sweep. He shifted slightly, resting closer, eyes holding the stranger's. Each breath, each movement, each tiny gesture spoke volumes. The quiet tension of the morning had released into a warm, profound connection. The volunteer whispered again, softly, almost to herself, "He's chosen, fully. Not out of fear. Not out of need. But because he recognizes something in him, something real." The stranger's eyes softened, gaze locked on Finn. "You're remarkable," he whispered. "I've never met a pup like you. I see your heart, your spirit, your courage." Finn's ears twitched. His tail swept slowly again. He nudged closer, small sigh escaping him. Calm, curious, connected. The bond that had been building for hours, step by step, gesture by gesture, had reached a turning point. From across the room, the volunteer smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "This is it," she whispered. "The moment he decided, fully. The moment he trusted completely." Finn rested his chin fully against the blanket, brushing lightly against the stranger's hand. The soft warmth, the calm presence, the gentle patience, all had been acknowledged, accepted, and returned. The emotional turning point was complete. The stranger whispered once more, soft and reflective. "It's okay, little one, you're safe. And I'll always be here." Finn's eyes softened. Tail sweeping slowly. Ears relaxed. A small, deliberate sigh escaped him. Calm, curious, connected. He had chosen. He had recognized. He had trusted. And in that golden, quiet space, the first true emotional breakthrough had been realized. The connection was no longer tentative. It was real. Deep. Intentional. And it was just beginning. The sunlight had softened, filtering through the shelter windows in long, warm rays that pulled around Finn and the stranger. The room hummed with quiet life, distant barks, the shuffle of paws, and soft murmurs of volunteers, yet all of it faded into the background. For Finn, and for the stranger, the world had shrunk to the golden patch of light where they shared this delicate, growing bond. Finn rested his chin lightly on the edge of the blanket, tail sweeping slowly, ears relaxed. He had chosen the stranger. He had trusted. And now, in the soft intimacy of this moment, the deeper truth was about to unfold. The stranger leaned slightly closer, voice low, calm, and gentle. "You know, sometimes the heart recognizes what the mind can't explain," he said. "There's a reason we find each other, even when it seems impossible." Finn tilted his head, ears flicking, tail sweeping carefully. His eyes held focus, curiosity, and trust, the quiet understanding that this person before him had meaning, that this connection wasn't ordinary. The volunteer, quietly observing, whispered under her breath, "He knows, he can feel it. Something important is here." The stranger spoke again, soft and reflective, almost like telling a story to the air itself. "A while back, I lost someone very special. A dog who taught me about patience, about trust, about love. And sometimes, when I least expected it, I think they guide me to the next one. The one who needs me, and who I need." Finn's small whine escaped, deliberate, soft, almost as if he understood. He nudged the blanket slightly closer to the stranger, eyes wide and glistening, ears alert yet relaxed. His intuition told him this wasn't just any human. This was someone who had seen love before, someone who understood connection. The volunteer's breath caught. "He's recognizing it," she whispered. "He feels the history, the warmth, the care. And he's responding." The stranger's hand hovered near Finn, just above the blanket, still not reaching in too quickly. I think you know that too. That something real can happen here. That you're safe, that we can be a family, in time." Finn leaned forward slightly, brushing the edge of the blanket against the stranger's hand. His tail gave a soft sweep. There was no rush, no demand, only recognition. He sensed the history, the care, the quiet love that had existed before him, and he responded in kind. The volunteer whispered again, almost to herself, "He's connecting to more than the present. He's sensing the past, and the possibilities of the future." The stranger's voice softened further. "I know you've been cautious, and I understand why. But sometimes, the heart knows what the mind cannot. And I think we were meant to meet." Finn's ears twitched. He inched closer. Nose twitching, tail sweeping slowly. He let out a soft, deliberate sigh, a sound that seemed to carry acknowledgement, acceptance, and understanding all at once. The volunteer smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "He's never done this before. Not like this. He's recognizing something meaningful." The stranger's voice remained calm, warm, rhythmic. "I've loved before, and I've learned that the smallest gestures, the quietest moments, tell us more than words ever can. And now, I think I see the same in you." Finn shifted his weight slightly, leaning more into the blanket, letting the subtle warmth of the stranger's presence sink in. Every tiny movement, a tilt of the head, a nudge forward, a soft sigh spoke of understanding, intuition, and quiet connection. The volunteer whispered again, almost breathless. He's recognizing the story, and he's choosing to be part of it. Fully, deliberately, on his own terms." The stranger's hand hovered again, this time brushing lightly against the edge of the blanket. "I see you, and I promise to be here. To be patient, to understand, to care." Finn's eyes softened. He nudged the blanket just slightly more, letting the touch linger. Tail sweeping slowly, ears relaxed. Calm, curious, connected. Each gesture, each small movement, was a silent conversation. And then, the subtle truth became undeniable. Finn wasn't just responding to presence or patience. He was recognizing love, a love that had existed before, a love that had been lost, and a love that was now being offered anew. The recognition was quiet, instinctive, profound. The volunteer whispered softly, tears glistening. He knows the heart behind him. That's why he chose him. Not out of need, not out of curiosity, but because he feels it. And it's real. The stranger smiled faintly, voice reflective. Sometimes, the heart leads us where we need to be. And I think we found each other for a reason. Finn's small whine escaped again, soft, deliberate, meaningful. He leaned slightly forward, pressing lightly against the blanket near the stranger's hand. Every inch, every tiny gesture, carried the depth of connection, recognition, and trust. The sunlight pooled around them, warm and golden. Finn's fur gleamed. The stranger's presence radiated calm and understanding. The quiet bond they had built over hours now revealed its full meaning, a connection born of intuition, patience, and heartfelt recognition. The volunteer whispered once more, almost reverently, the truth behind his actions is more beautiful than anyone imagined. Finn rested his chin fully on the blanket, eyes locked on the stranger. Tail sweeping a slow rhythm, ears soft. Calm, curious, connected. He had chosen. He had recognized. He had trusted. And now, the heart-touching truth of that choice was clear. This bond wasn't casual. It was destiny, a gentle, quiet, profound recognition of love and understanding that had existed before and would continue forward. The stranger spoke softly, reflective, almost a whisper to the room itself. I see you. I understand you, and I promise to always honor that trust. Always. Finn's gaze softened, small sigh escaping him. Tail sweeping, ears relaxed. He leaned slightly closer. Calm, curious, connected. And in that golden, quiet space, the heart-touching truth had fully revealed itself. The bond between them was no longer tentative. It was real. Intentional. Warm. Deep. And it was just the beginning. The late afternoon sunlight streamed softly through the shelter windows, bathing the room in a golden, calming glow. Dust motes floated lazily in the warm light, drifting like tiny stars suspended in the quiet. The shelter's usual hum of activity, distant barks, soft shuffles of paws, murmurs of volunteers, had faded to a gentle backdrop. All attention now centered on Finn and the stranger. Finn lay on his blanket, chin resting lightly, tail sweeping slowly, ears relaxed. His eyes were calm, focused, and luminous, a reflection of trust, curiosity, and the quiet bond he had chosen. The stranger remained crouched near the cage, still, patient, a steady presence. His hand hovered gently near the blanket, a touch of warmth and reassurance. The volunteer watched from a distance, heart swelling. He's at peace, she whispered softly. Completely, and on his own terms. Finn gave a small, deliberate nudge toward the stranger's hand. Tail sweeping slowly, whiskers brushing the edge of the blanket. Calm, curious, connected. Each motion carried meaning, each gesture a reflection of trust and recognition. The stranger smiled faintly, voice low, rhythmic, warm. You don't have to do anything, just be here. That's all I need. Finn's ears flicked. He leaned slightly forward, pressing just enough to acknowledge the stranger's presence. No rush. No urgency. Just intention, trust, and quiet joy. The volunteer whispered, almost reverently, he's chosen. Fully. And he knows it's safe. Minutes passed, soft and golden. Finn rested more comfortably now, tail sweeping in gentle arcs, eyes still focused, following every subtle movement. The stranger spoke quietly, reflective. I see you. I understand you, and I promise. I'll always be here. Finn gave a small sigh, gentle and deliberate. A quiet exhale of comfort, recognition, and calm. The bond they had built over hours, step by step, gesture by gesture, had matured. It was no longer tentative. It was real. Warm. Intentional. The volunteer approached slowly, kneeling near the cage. "Are you ready for the next step?" she asked softly. Her hands were gentle, non-threatening. "You've already done so much." Finn's gaze flicked briefly to her, then back to the stranger. The subtle understanding in his eyes was clear. He was ready. Ready to leave the shelter behind. Ready to follow the heart that had recognized him. Ready to trust fully. The stranger spoke softly, voice warm and calm. "Shall we go, little one? Together?" Finn leaned slightly toward him, sniffed the air, tail sweeping slowly. A small, deliberate movement, intentional and meaningful. His eyes, luminous in the golden light, reflected recognition, trust, and choice. He had made his decision. The volunteer opened the cage gently. "Come on, Finn, it's your time." Finn stepped forward carefully, paws touching the floor. He glanced back briefly, not with hesitation, but as if to acknowledge the past, the shelter, and the journey that had led him here. Then he stepped fully into the stranger's space, brushing against him lightly, tail sweeping slowly. The stranger crouched slightly, letting Finn guide the pace. "You did it, you trusted. And I see you." Finn sniffed the stranger's hand, nudged gently, and then rested his head against it, calm and intentional. No rush. No pressure. Just trust and connection, fully realized. The volunteer smiled through her tears. He's happy. And he knows it's safe. That's all that matters. The stranger's voice was quiet, reflective. "I promise, this is just the beginning. A life full of love, care, and understanding. Together." Finn's tail gave a soft sweep. He lifted his gaze briefly, meeting the stranger's eyes. Calm, curious, connected. Every inch, every gesture, every breath reinforced the bond, the trust, the recognition, and the love that had grown between them over hours. As they walked slowly toward the exit, sunlight streaming in, Finn at the stranger's side, the warmth of the moment wrapped around them. The shelter faded into the background. The past, the hesitations, the cautious steps all became part of the story that led to this new beginning. The volunteer whispered softly, almost to herself, "He's chosen, and he's finally home." In every sense of the word. The stranger reached down, gently patting Finn's head. "You're incredible, little one. I see you. I really do." Finn leaned into the touch, tail sweeping slowly, ears relaxed. Calm, curious, connected. A soft sigh escaped him, deliberate, content, and complete. The hesitation of the past had melted away. Trust, recognition, and love had taken root fully. As they stepped out into the late afternoon light, the world outside seemed warmer, softer, more golden. Finn's small paws touched the ground with confidence. His eyes shone with calm curiosity, and his tail moved in a steady rhythm. He was home. The stranger spoke softly, reflective, almost to the air itself. "We found each other, and it feels right. Just as it should." Finn nudged his hand again, a small, deliberate gesture of acknowledgement, connection, and understanding. Calm, curious, connected. And as they walked together, side by side, the gentle warmth of the afternoon sun wrapping around them, the story reached its full emotional closure. The bond, patiently built, intuitively chosen, and fully realized, was complete. Trust had been given. Recognition had been felt. Love had been found. The volunteer watched from the doorway, smiling, heart full. "This is what it's all about," she whispered softly. "Connection, trust, and love, in the gentlest, most intentional way. He's finally home." And in that quiet, golden moment, Finn lifted his gaze one last time toward the stranger, calm, curious, connected. The journey had ended. The future had begun. And the heart-touching truth of the day was simple, profound, and pure. Sometimes, the smallest moments, the quietest gestures, and the deepest intuition can create bonds stronger than anything imagined.